There are 5 essential elements to a story: characters, setting, plot, conflict, and resolution. Conflict and drama are essential to a story. Without conflict, there ain't no story. Drama is a sign of connection. No drama means there's no connection. I think that that's the other side of our gospel today. Christ calls us to forgive one another. But what does forgiveness presume? Forgiveness presumes that there's drama, and drama presumes that there's connection. Sometimes there's no forgiveness in a community, not because there's hatred for one another, but because there's no connection. Sometimes in our church parish, we don't have to forgive each other. Why? Because we aren't connected. Today we begin our fall homily series, More Than a Building. God calls us to commit to connect with fellow parishioners. Since last March, we each realized how important connection is. The disconnection of quarantine and the pandemic has shown us 2 things. First, how important connection is. And second, how disconnected we already were, even before COVID-19. The truth is that communities in America have been growing more and more disconnected ever since the late 60s. And we are suffering because of it. Christ's call to forgive presumes connection. It presumes that we have real neighbors when modern society often acknowledges no neighbors. Would that we had to forgive each other 77 times here at St. Leo. Would that there was more drama here at St. Leo, because it would mean that we are more than a building. This morning, let's look at the collapse of connection, why it matters, and what God calls us to do about it. Robert Putnam, in his book, Bowling Alone, he talks about this collapse of community. He distinguishes between 3 kinds of capital. What is capital? Capital is an asset that enhances my power to perform certain actions, like physical capital. Think of it like a tool, a screwdriver. A screwdriver enhances my power to perform certain actions. Without that screwdriver, there are certain actions I can't perform. Physical capital, there's also human capital. Think of it like training. For example, a college education. It enhances my power to perform certain actions. Well, what Putnam points out is there's not only tools, there's not only training, but there's also connection, social capital. It enhances my power to perform certain actions. Because what does connection bring with it? Connection brings with it reciprocity. Connection brings with it trust. Connection brings with it honesty and cooperation. As we see, there has been a real collapse in that over the last 60 years. He details the collapse in political community. Historic numbers of people not voting, withdrawing from political community, the steepest decline in those activities that we can't do alone, like attending local meetings, serving local organizations, taking part in good government activities. We might say, oh, I'm very political, Father. But today we're more likely to be spectators of politics than participants in political community. The collapse of civic community, our real involvement in associations, in groups that bring people together for a common purpose. Our participation in these groups has plummeted. Today's groups focus not on bringing We've seen a decline in church attendance and church membership, but these aren't even the most important. Why? Because they can all be done alone. Where do we see the steepest collapse? The social life of the church outside of worship. There may still be religious people, but today we have believers and not belongers. Believers and not belongers. And finally, the collapse of informal community. Visits with friends, the evening meal, card games, virtually all forms of family togetherness down. The neighborhood bar, the neighborhood restaurant, the neighborhood diner, the neighborhood cafe have been replaced by fast food, where we don't know each other's names, and we don't care that we don't know each other's names. Too often today we allocate our time toward ourselves and our immediate family and away from the wider community. Putnam paints a pretty stark picture. And you might be asking yourself, well, so what? So what that political and civic, religious and informal community have collapsed? What's the real loss of that thought? But we see a real loss of reciprocity, a real loss of trust, a real loss of honesty. Putnam highlights 5 ways in particular that our communities benefit from social capital, that our communities benefit from connection. He says that connection makes us safer, makes us smarter, makes us richer, makes us healthier, and makes us able to govern better. I mean, who doesn't want that? You know, who here doesn't want to sign up for all 5 of us? So how does connection accomplish those things? Well, statistics show that it makes us smarter. States whose residents trust each other, join organizations, volunteer, vote, socialize with friends, those are the states where children flourish. You can have all sorts of material advantages as a community. You can have all sorts of cultural advantages, but if you aren't connecting, statistics show that you do a poor job of educating children. Connection makes us safer. Statistics show that where there's higher connection, there are fewer murders. Why? Because we're rooted in a place. We know each other. We mix with each other. We participate in life with each other. Connection makes us richer. Think about going about looking for a job when you're connected. Think about career advancement when you're connected. Think about working together in your workplace when you're connected. Connection makes us healthier. When we connect, we are less likely to have colds, heart attacks, strokes, cancer, depression, premature death of all sorts. I thought this was the most striking of statistics in this area. Robert Putnam says that connection rivals in strength the detrimental effects of smoking, obesity, high blood pressure, and inactivity. So in other words, if you came to me and said, "Hey, Father, I'd like to improve my health," connecting does almost as much good as quitting smoking. If you belong to no groups right now, and you join one, you cut your risk of dying over the next year in half. Makes us safer, smarter, richer, healthier. It also helps us to govern better. I don't think we have to, it's not hard to see what governance looks like without connection. When we aren't connected, government is about demonizing opponents. When we aren't connected, middle of the road folks drop out. When we aren't connected, politics less deliberative when we aren't connected. Government is about serving special interests rather than about the common good. Government is better when we trust each other, when there is reciprocity and honesty. It's more effective, it's more innovative, it's less corrupt. When we connect with one another, government is we, not they. I think he paints an extremely compelling case of the problem and why it matters. I'd like you to return to those early days of quarantine, those first weeks, and return to that experience when you realize the pain, when you experience the pain of being disconnected from those you love, and realized the lack of connection that was already part and parcel of your life. When you did things with your family that you hadn't done in years. The lives we want, the lives we dream of for ourselves, our children, our spouses, our families, our community. The path to those lives is connection. The temptation is to collapse in on ourselves, to collapse into our immediate families, to allocate our time toward ourselves and our immediate family and away from the wider community. The wider community needs us, and we need the wider community. Political community, civic, religious, informal community, they offer us unique gifts that other communities don't. The family is the building block of society, but it does not encompass all of society. It does not exhaust society. Sometimes we don't have to forgive each other because we're not connected. Today, as a parish family, over the course of these next 4 weeks, we commit to reconnect. Would that we had to forgive each other 77 times. Would that there was more drama here at St. Leo.